Hello lovely people and welcome back to my channel. I hope the lighting is sort of okay. This is not the best time of the day for me to film because it is on the one hand extremely bright, but at the same time it's also very clouded outside and very dark, so I'm just doing my best here, just bear with me. Anyway, it is mid-July or around mid-July and I would like to do my mid-year haul video. I did this last year where I also spoke about all the things that I had purchased from January all the way up until the end of June, and I thought that was a really good way to talk about everything that I had purchased so far, hold myself a little bit accountable as to what I had spent my money on, and just give a little mini reviews to everything. Let's get started. An important note, I'm actually not going to talk about the products that I have repurchased just because they are staples for me and you know every now and then I have to repurchase them, so stuff like eyeshadow primers or Fix Plus, I'm not going to cover that because I don't think that's very interesting. I'm just going to talk about the stuff that's new. I'm going to do this in chronological order. The year started relatively slow for me because I didn't really purchase any makeup all the way up until the second half of February when the Melt Modern Love Palette when the Melt Millennial Pinx palette was announced. This was their Valentine's Day release and I was very excited for it because I love everything about it. The packaging looks absolutely stunning. Theoretically, I really love the color story of this eyeshadow palette, but without wasting your time with too much detail, because I've actually already made 2 videos on this palette, I am not the hugest fan. I'm sorry, not cosmetics. I think your heart was at the right place, but the actual execution of the palette is not the best. I'm not talking about the mattes. The matte shadows in this eyeshadow palette are fine. What I'm talking about are the shimmers. They have an extremely bizarre formula where they're very soft. They are very flaky and they're super weird. If you want to see me struggling with this palette, I'm going to link up here the video that I filmed recently revisiting this palette, and you can see exactly what the problem is. So theoretically yes, in practice no. This is my only regret of all the products that I'm going to show you. I rarely have regrets when it comes to eyeshadow palettes. I'm really picky. I buy a lot, but at the same time I'm also very critical of what I want to buy, and I make sure that it's brands or, you know, stuff that I can almost guarantee that I'm going to like. This was a real fail for me, and I can't help but think that the fault lies mostly on the side of Melt Cosmetics and not me, because I'm going to speak about another eyeshadow palette from them which was released a little bit after the Millennial Pinx, and I actually love that palette. Now, the other thing that I bought in the month of February, I made my first purchase of Sonia G brushes. I bought 2 of them. As you can see here, I have the Builder Pro. Excuse me, mine is a little bit wet because I just used it, and the other one is the Crease Pro, which looks like this. Gorgeous, beautiful quality brushes. These are probably my most luxurious, most expensive brushes, and for good reason. They are really good quality. While I love and enjoy these brushes, and I probably will purchase more in the future, I want to make a point that if you don't have super expensive brushes but you have like more mid-tier brushes like Zoevo brushes, you are fine. Evidence for this you can find in this video where I compared my Zoevo brushes versus the more luxury brushes that I have in my collection, just in terms of their performance, to see if it really makes such a huge difference in how the shadow ends up looking on your eyes, and spoiler, it didn't. I forgot to mention that together with the Millennial Pinx palette, which I ordered via Beauty Bay by the way, I also ordered one more brush. This is the My Precise Crease from a brand called My Kit Co Pro, which looks like this. I love this brush. Love it. I don't have a brush like this in my collection. I've not really seen many other brands do a brush like this. This is the most perfect, like fluffy, small pencil type of brush. So it has a little bit the functionality of a pencil brush, but it's fluffy, which makes it much more convenient for like fluffing things in your inner corner or blending out your lower lash line. Something that I always struggle with is something that is smaller to blend out my lower lash line. You can blend out your lower lash line with a pencil brush, no problem, but a pencil brush is somewhat stiffer and somewhat denser, so it's not the best. But something like this is absolutely perfect. I highly recommend this brush. I really think it's one of the most unique shapes of brushes that I have seen, and I definitely have nothing like it in my collection to compare with. Moving into March is when the whole quarantine and the COVID pandemic started, and I feel like that's when I started doing a little bit more like let's call it emotional shopping. I didn't go overboard or anything, but I certainly think some of these products I would not have bought if it weren't for the fact that I was stuck at home, feeling a little bit anxious, and I wanted to have something to look forward to. I made a purchase from the French Sephora. I don't do that very often because the French Sephora charges 14 euros for shipping from France to the Netherlands, which is awfully expensive. Anyway, at the time the Natasha-Nonna mini palettes were only available to me through Sephora, and I really wanted to try the mini gold palette because I have the big gold palette, which was a present from my wonderful friend Bia, and I thought the mini gold would, you know, complement it perfectly. While I enjoy this little USB stick of a palette, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think I needed this palette, and I think I could easily live without ever missing it. There are a couple of shades in here that are really beautiful. I love this matte green over here. This topper shade is really gorgeous, but when I put it on my eyes next to one of the topper shades that are in the original gold palette, I don't see much of a difference. So this is, yeah, this gives the same effect as one of the toppers in the big gold palette. So I don't think about this eyeshadow palette much. I don't get overly excited when I'm going to use it. So while I enjoy having it, it is a little bit of a regret, and I think it's something that I would eventually maybe consider letting go of. Together with the Natasha-Nonna mini gold palette, I also ordered a mini of the Hourglass ambient lighting powder in the shade Dim Light. How desperate must I have been to pay 14 euros shipping to get these two small things here? Anyway, I don't really regret having this powder because I love the ambient lighting powder formula, and I was very curious especially about the shade Dim Light because I have the shade Mood Light, and while I enjoy it, it has a little bit of those like lilac-y tones to it that sometimes makes me look really like pinkish reddish, and it doesn't really flatter me too much because I'm more of like a neutral to warm olive tone, and I think this one makes a much better shade match for me personally. In the same month, curiosity took the best of me, and I finally decided to order one of the Cover FX blush duos. I had actually lusted after these ever since they were released, and the only reason I never purchased them is because for the longest time they weren't really available, and then they became available via Beauty Bay or Feel Unique or both, I can't remember. But I always found them like so expensive that I thought, never mind. But you know, quarantine hit, desperation hit, and I decided that it's time for me to try the Cover FX blush duos. They are very expensive, but I think they're fabulous quality. I have the shade Warm Honey, which I think is also one of the most beautiful and one of the most unique tones of blush that they have in the collection, because the rest of the shades are also really pretty, but not something we haven't seen before. Whereas I feel like Warm Honey is just, I don't know, such an interesting tone of blush. It's not pink, it's not brown, it's not orange, it's like something in between, and it's beautiful, it's flattering, it really warms up the complexion. I really love it. This is definitely not a regret, and I'm happy to have one of these. Around the same time, I watched a video from Alice's Beauty Madness, if you don't know, one of my besties here on YouTube, and she was wearing the most beautiful chocolate brown lipstick. And then I went into my drawers trying to find a lipstick like that, and I couldn't, because most of the brown lipsticks that I have tend to lean a little bit more neutral cool. I didn't really have anything that was like truly a warm brown lipstick. So then I went on a search high and low, and I found the color. I ordered it on a whim, and I think it's the perfect lipstick. It's exactly what I was looking for. We're talking about the color Deborah from the NARS Audacious lipstick line. These are some of my favorite lipsticks. I think the Audacious line has a wonderful formula. They're not matte, they're not creamy, they're just very opaque, very comfortable, beautiful formula. So the color Deborah is pretty much exactly what I was looking for. It's a beautiful, deep, warm chocolate brown. Another product that I bought kind of on a whim around the same time that I bought this lipstick, I think it was sometime in April, is another Melt palette. Melt Cosmetics is going on a spree to release all of their stacks in an eyeshadow palette format. I applaud the effort, but at the same time I think Melt needs to like slow down, because they have literally been releasing a palette every month, and I think it's getting a little bit too much. And what I think is a shame is that this is the Rust palette that I purchased in April, by the way. I feel like this palette got a little bit lost in the crossfire because it's a very fall color story. Very fall. I don't I don't really know what else epitomizes fall better than this color story, and they released it in April right before the summer, and I feel like people were excited for about 30 seconds and then they moved on because Melt also announced that they were releasing the 420 palette. This eyeshadow palette, unlike the Millennial Pinx palette, is wonderful. I love it. I love the color story. I love how unique some of these tones are, and I think this is a color story that really flatters someone with my skin tone. This pumpkin orange over here is one of the most beautiful and unique eyeshadows that I have in my collection. This warm, like rosy brown, looks so flattering with my brown eyes. This shade here, Tarnish, which is like a gold, cool bronze kind of shade, is so unique. I have nothing like it. I love this eyeshadow palette, unlike the Millennial Pinx palette. Somewhat later, either in April or mid-May, Pat McGrath did two things. First of all, she had a 20% off sale, and second of all, she re-released the Decadence palette in a limited edition gold packaging. I purchased from both. So, during the sale, I decided to purchase the single eyeshadow in the shade Rose Venus. This shade is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful, like, warm, neutral shades ever. It's really reflective. It's so stunning on the eye. It's one of those colors that you can just throw on your lid, blend out, and you're good to go. I love this eyeshadow. Now, I actually made a video demoing the products that I have purchased from that sale. I can leave that video up here for you if you are curious. But at the time, I purchased also, by the way, the Pat McGrath Highlighting Trio, and at the time I said that while I enjoy it and I pretty much love everything that I've ever bought from Pat McGrath, so I'm going to like it, I wasn't super fond of it because I thought the colors didn't really flatter me too much, especially this shade here in the middle, which has a bit more of like very stark golden green tones to it, and I felt like it was clashing a little bit with my skin tone. Now, in the meantime, I've been using this palette like crazy because I learned from Alexandra Anele here on YouTube. She's also the gorgeous eye model for Pat McGrath. You're going to see a lot of her eye looks shared on Pat McGrath. She said that what she uses... So she said something that was really enlightening to me, and I don't know why it didn't occur to me to do it as well. But basically what she does is she mixes this shade together with the iridescent pink duochrome. And then when she layers them, she gets the most beautiful, like, peachy duochrome shade. I don't know whether that's coming across on camera at all, but it's actually also what I have on my cheekbones. And since I discovered that, and because I love the formula so much, I've been using this highlighter palette so very much. I use it also as an inner corner highlight with a bunch of looks. I use it as a brow bone highlight. I use it on my face. I absolutely love it. This was a product that I was a little bit lukewarm about, and I definitely had mild regrets about succumbing to the desire to have it, but now I actually love it and I'm so happy that I have it in my collection. I have a lot of other highlighters that I enjoy. I really love, for instance, the Anastasia Beverly Hills highlighters, but they have a more chunky formula and they're definitely not as versatile as these are. And like I said, she re-released the Decadence palette, which I had said many times that I'm not going to purchase because I have a bunch of it in different shapes and forms. I'm not going to retell the story because I already told the whole story when I did my Get Ready With Me talking about it. The gist is I became very weak and very enabled by my good friends here on YouTube and on Instagram, and I ended up purchasing the Decadence palette, which comes in this gorgeous gold packaging. Let me tell you, I don't regret purchasing this palette one bit. If you've been on my channel for any amount of time, you will know that I adore the eyeshadow formula of Pat McGrath. It's pretty much my favorite when it comes to eyeshadows, and I love having a bunch of these colors. I have nothing quite like this sage green over here. Look how gorgeous that is. Look how beautiful. Not to mention this shade over here, which is like a deep, very... like this beautiful copper shade which has so much depth to it. I don't know the names of these shades, you guys, I'm so sorry. The sage green is called Sinful and the bronzy copper is called Inferno. So these are just two of the shades that I didn't have and I'm really happy to have in my collection now thanks to this eyeshadow palette, With this palette, I basically have them all now. I have all of the Mothership palettes that have ever been released. Speaking of Pat McGrath, as you guys know, in the month of June, she also released her Divine Rose 2 palette, which I spoke about at length. I've done a video on it, which I can also link up in the cards for you. I have it in the limited edition pink chrome packaging. This is the most beautiful summer eyeshadow palette release if I have ever seen one. I'm sorry, Natasha-Nonna, your bronze palette is gorgeous, but it cannot compare to this color story. This is a unique, thought through color story with so much like summer tones to it, with so much versatility. I love this eyeshadow palette. This is probably one of Pat's best color stories, and I have absolutely no regrets about purchasing it. That's all I'm going to say. This palette is guaranteed to be one of my most favorite releases of the year 2020. I adore it. Remaining in theme with the summer releases, something that I purchased again from the French Sephora, but this time because I have no other choice, are one of the Fenty Cheeks Out cream bronzers. I have mine in the shade Honey Glaze, and I also purchased one of her Cheek Out blushes. Mine is in the shade Fuego Blush. I'm going to swatch both of them for you. Now, when I looked through the shades of bronzers and I read a little bit on Temptalia how the different colors compare to other shades from other brands, I was under the impression that the shade that is a bit lighter than this one and that most people with my skin tone would buy, which is I think Butter Biscuit, don't quote me on it, I think that's what it's called, is very reminiscent of the Chanel Soleil Tan de Chanel bronzer. And I have that one already. So I bought the shade Honey Glaze, which as you can see is very, very warm tone. It looks quite deep, but you can actually blend it out. I'm wearing it today as my bronzer and I don't feel like it looks too dark on me. I really enjoy this formula. One thing I'm going to say, I feel like the Chanel formula still stays a little bit more luminous, while the Fenty ones still set a little bit more almost like satin matte. So it really depends on what you prefer. I like both formulas. I also purchased, like I said, one of her cream blushes, and this is the shade Fuego Flush, which is a straight up like orange. It looks very intimidating, and depending how you apply it, it can also look quite orange on the skin, but it's actually a very pretty shade. It has beautiful like golden sparkles to it, and if you just like stipple it onto your cheeks, it doesn't look too orange and it looks actually quite flattering, at least on someone with my skin tone. So today I'm wearing also this blush, and I think it looks really, really beautiful. A friend of mine gave me a gift card for my birthday to use in one of our cosmetic stores over here, and I finally decided to use that gift card in June and purchase the Dior Backstage Face&Body foundation with it. Mine is in the shade 2, and I love the formula of this foundation. This is a sheer to medium coverage foundation, and it is very comparable to another foundation that I mentioned that I really like recently, which is the Estee Lauder Double Wear Nude Foundation. Both foundations have a lovely, easy to work with formula. They're both sheer to medium coverage. The difference is that the Estee Lauder Double Wear Nude sets a little bit more in a luminous dewy finish, whereas the Dior foundation definitely sets more into a satin matte. It's not a flat matte, but it definitely leans a bit more matte. So it really depends on your personal preference for like the finish of a foundation, which one you will prefer, but I feel like the two have a very comparable formula. And last but not least, as you guys know, I also purchased the Natasha-Nonna Bronzed palette. I just posted a video demoing this palette and doing like swatches and comparison swatches. I really enjoyed it. I definitely think it is a wonderful summer release. Like I said, I don't think it can compare to the Divine Rose 2 from Pat McGrath, because this is a much more monochromatic, much simpler, much less creative color story. I mean, there's creativity to it if you think about the different undertones of the color bronze, but I think in terms of versatility and creativity, to me the Divine Rose palette still stands out. That being said, I love this eyeshadow palette as well. I'm actually wearing the palette today, and I'm wearing the only shade that I find a little bit less impressive, and that is this one here. It's the purple shade Palladium, which has a little bit of like a silvery blue duochrome to it. And the only reason I'm not super crazy about it is because I love really metallic shades, and this is definitely more of like a satin and not really a metallic. But I do like the smoky look that I created with it today. So guys, these were all the products that I purchased in the first 6 months of this year. I bought a lot of eyeshadow palettes. Hot damn! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eyeshadow palettes in 6 months. While it's not exorbitant, it's more like 1 eyeshadow palette per month, I still find it quite a lot, and I hope I'm going to slow down from now onwards because I don't want to be buying an eyeshadow palette every month. Anyway, let me know what were your top 3 favorite products that you bought in the past 6 months. Let's chat about it further in the comments. As usual, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you would like to see more of my face, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!